What's up, coaches? My name is Delaney Weimer, and today I'm going to be walking you through arousal and anxiety in sport, and we're going to talk about what this means for you as a coach. Okay, to jump right into things, we're going to start off with definitions. We'll start with arousal. The definition for arousal is that it is a blend of physiological and psychological activity in a person. So this is going to be both the level of activity that's going on both in their head and what they're doing, like their behaviors. And then there's different intensity dimensions of motivation at a particular moment. So it's not really like a steady thing. Your arousal levels are something that's going to change over time. And arousal in sport is a human condition that ranges along a continuum from sleep to high excitation and is expressed physiologically, cognitively, and behaviorally. So this is really important here that arousal is on a continuum. It's never stagnant. And as you can see, I have like a little diagram down there on the left. And the lowest part is sleep. And that is like the man on the left is a good picture of that. He's calm. He has his eyes closed. He's breathing. He's trying to lower his arousal levels, where the man on the right is not lowering his arousal levels. He's very excited. He's got his fist balled up. He's screaming. He has really high arousal levels here. And so that's kind of like the two opposites that we see in sport of different arousal levels. So, really important aspect of arousal is the neuropsychology of it. Basically, like before the competition and in the competition itself, your arousal is going to set off events in your nervous systems that result in the certain arousal level, and this impacts your athlete's performance greatly. So, one of the things it impacts is physiological reactions. This is going to be like your athlete having their heart beating, they're sweating, they're really nervous, so they have like increased muscle tension, things like that. Also the cognitions, what they're thinking about, they're like worried thoughts, they're really excited thoughts, maybe they're calm, maybe they're not. So every athlete's different, so take note of what kind of thoughts you see them speaking out on. And then this shows up in their feelings, which they may be really nervous, they may be pumped up, they might be really calm because they're trying to control those arousal levels. So all different things like this are different aspects of the neuropsychology where their nervous systems are being affected, and so these are things that you should be taking note of as a coach of your different athletes, because they're all going to look a little bit different. Okay, switching gears here, we're going to look at the definition of anxiety. Anxiety is defined as a negative emotional state with feelings of worry, nervousness, and apprehension associated with activation or arousal of the body. So this tells us that anxiety is both negative and it is directly associated with arousal levels. Okay. There's two different types of anxiety that we're going to look at. The first is trait anxiety, and this is a characteristic that influences perceived threat. So this is more of like a natural like DNA sort of thing. The athlete's just born with that. They're naturally more anxious about everything in their world. And then state anxiety is the other one. This is going to be more of an immediate state or response to stress. So this is where the athlete is just anxious like in the moment, like in the competition, they're nervous. They're anxious about what's going on. But what's important about these is that they're in direct relationship with one another. So if you have an athlete with higher trait anxiety, then they're more likely to have higher state anxiety within like a competition or something like that. So it takes knowing your athlete to know, like predict how they're going to react in competition, because if you know your athlete has higher trait anxiety just by the way they talk to you, the way that they view the things around them, then you know like they're going to have a higher state anxiety, and that can be helpful to you as a coach in determining how your athletes are going to be feeling whenever they get to a competition beforehand, and how you can help them control that before it gets out of hand. So within the state anxiety of a competition, there's different degrees to which or stages to which that this state anxiety happens. So first is somatic state anxiety. This is going to be like those physiological reactions that we talked about, like increased muscle tension, increased heart rate, blood pumping, everything like that. The next one is going to be cognitive state anxiety, and this is going to be the degree to which one typically worries or has doubts. And so this is like their nervous thoughts running through their head, things like that. And then the third stage of state anxiety is going to be concentration disruption. So this is the degree to which one experiences concentration disruption during competition. So that means during like their spaced out, they're not really focused on what's going on in the competition because they're so worried about the things around them. They're so worried about the competition that they're not really able to focus in. So you as a coach need to be able to measure the arousal and anxiety levels in your athletes. So this, like, some simple ways that you can do this is looking at their physiological signs, their heart rate, their sweating. Like, an athlete physically looks nervous, they look like they're about to break down, then like, sort of where their arousal levels are at. And then the other way to do this is going to be the multidimensional self-report scale. An example of this is CSAI-2, and this is just like a little survey sort of thing where the athlete reflects on how they feel before a competition. So they fill this out, and this can be super helpful for them as they realize where they're at. They realize, oh, I don't need to be so nervous, I have this under control. Or it gives the coach a good idea of, hey, this person's stressed out, maybe do some things, help them work through some breathing exercises so they can calm down before the competition starts. So, to connect real world to science, we're going to look at some theories about arousal in sports, and we're going to talk about their practical application for coaches so that you can better understand why your athletes are reacting the way that they are and how you can maybe help them navigate that and help them find their optimal arousal levels. So the first theory that we're going to look at is going to be the inverted U theory. This is really one of the most simple models of anxiety and arousal in sport, and this predicts that performance is best at a moderate optimal level and becomes progressively worse with increases or decreases in their arousal. So you can see in this chart here, basically with lower arousal levels, they're going to be under aroused and their performance isn't going to be as great. And then it goes up and it reaches that top optimal arousal level, and then this is the area in which the athlete's properly aroused and they're doing their best performance. But then if you go beyond that and they get too excited, too pumped up, too nervous, then their performance is going to drop and you're going to see a steady decline over time with over-arousal. Okay, next we're going to look at the catastrophe theory. So this is a little different from the inverted U theory. It's built off of that. It's a different idea where the relationship between cognitive anxiety and performance changes depending on the level of arousal. That's the same as the inverted U theory. But the catastrophe theory suggests that the arousal once it goes beyond that optimal level, it does not have a smooth curve back down, but it drops abruptly like you can see in the diagram here. And after this, the athlete can try to bring the arousal level back under control. They can try to turn things around, do some breathing practices, but this requires them to go back to a much lower arousal level. They have to go back to that one point and then build back up to the optimal level from there. But if the athlete does not have any sort of intervention, then their performance is just going to continue its steady decline. It's just going to get worse and they're never going to get back to that state without an intervention. Okay, after looking at those two theories, we're going to look at one that's just a little bit different. This is the individualized zones of optimal functioning model, or the eyes-off model. So in this model, athletes have a zone of optimal state anxiety or arousal in which their best performance occurs, and outside of this zone, poor performance occurs. This is similar to the other two models that we saw. But what's different about this model is that it shows each athlete has different needs for arousal levels, and it varies from individual to individual. So like you see in this diagram, an athlete may have a low eyes-off profile where they need to be more calm when they're performing, and that's when they have their best performance. But if you look at athlete 3, they have a high eyes-off profile where they have to be super hyped up, and that's when they have their best performance. And in this model, it's important to note that a given emotion can be associated with positive performance for one athlete, but negative performance for another. And an example of this is anger. So maybe anger helps one athlete perform better, but it makes another one perform worse. And then there's also both positive and negative emotions that can enhance performance for certain individuals, and also positive and negative emotions can decrease performance for certain individuals. So these feelings like nervousness, confidence, calmness, all these different things are going to impact your athletes differently. And so it's important to know sort of where your athlete stands here and to be able to talk to each one differently about what their needs are and how you can best help them as a coach. If they need to be calmer, maybe talk to them, give them a nice little pep talk. But if someone needs to be hyped up, maybe you have to scream at them, smack their back, get them excited to play. So this is where it's important to note that athletes are different, and you as a coach have to figure out how to best help your athletes. So, after looking at these theories, why should you even care about them as a coach? As a coach, you should care about them because finding that optimal arousal level is going to be the performance sweet spot where your athletes are energized but controlled, focused but relaxed. And you want to help them find this sweet spot so that they can have the best performance. And figuring out how to regulate their arousal levels is going to be the key to achieving optimal arousal, and helping your athletes achieve this is important so they can get the most success at your competitions. But it is so important to note that every athlete is different, like we looked at in that eyes-off model, and it's important that you're taking time to understand your athlete's needs, because this can make a big difference in their performance at your competitions. So you decided you want to help your athletes. What are some steps you can take as a coach? So here are 4 different steps that can help you help your athletes manage their stress. First, it's important that you determine what demands or stressors are placed on the athlete. This could be like an increased workload at practice, decreased rest between practices, hectic travel schedules, things like that. Second, you need to analyze who is experiencing the most stress on the team. This could be like the captain, certain playing positions on the team. Different athletes on your team are going to have different amounts of stress or anxiety based on what we saw in that model. And third, you need to observe the reactions athletes have to the increased stress. And this could be like the somatic and cognitive state anxiety, having the attention concentration issues, just noting different things like that and how your athletes are reacting to their stress levels. And then fourth, look at the behaviors of the athletes due to increased stress. So this could look like a number of different things. It could be reduced productivity or effort in practice. It could be decreased satisfaction with their performance, things like that. But once these 4 steps have been identified, then you can make a targeted effort to reduce their stress or help them control their arousal levels in competition, before competition, whenever you best need to imply that, so that you're getting to the source and you're able to help your athlete from there. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, coaches. I hope you all have a better idea of anxiety and arousal in sport for your athletes, and how maybe you can better help them navigate this so that they can have their optimal competition performances and better help your team. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me, or I'm going to attach a handout with an overview of all this information in the comments below. Okay, last thing, these are my references. Feel free to check them out if you want to read more on the information that I gave you, or check out where I got the information from. Thank you all for joining me.